I'm just trying to humor. Hey y'all, welcome back to Falling Off Curbs. I'm your host, Kat, and I'm super excited to jump into this week's episode. If y'all tuned in last week, we kicked things off by exploring the big question, how did I get here? And so today we're talking about something that I think of as both a concept and a gift, the luxury of gray. And so, y'all, we live in a world that loves black and white answers. So living in the gray can be really, really uncomfortable and oftentimes just scary. But I learned that gray is where life actually happens. It's where we're growing, it's where we're wrestling, and it's where we start to see things in their fullness. It's real, it's messy, but it is absolutely necessary. So again, grab a seat, a snack, your coffee, your tea, whatever keeps you cozy. And let's jump into the beauty of the in-between. When I say gray, I am talking specifically about the space between extremes where the nuance live. It's that middle ground between like the yes and the no, between certainty and uncertainty, between right and wrong. It's all the space where questions matter more than answers, and it's where we're challenged to really see beyond the border. And oftentimes it's a very uncomfortable space because we have truly been conditioned to crave clarity. Black and white feels safe, it feels certain, but honestly, life is rarely certain and or clear cut like that. So think about it. How many times have we, because you and me, okay? How many times have we made decisions or judged other people or formed opinions really without considering all of the layers, specifically the layers that exist in human experience, right? The thing about the human condition is that it is indeed a condition. So living in the gray, to me, it invites us to kind of just slow down and sit with the complexities of the condition. And it helps us to embrace the ands instead of the ors. To me, y'all, why have one when you can have two? Why have uh, um, this one instead of both of them? I've learned that sitting in the gray means it's okay for opposites to coexist. They truly can be roommates, and it's okay for me to be scared and courageous. It's okay for me to feel hurt and be healing. And there's something really empowering about realizing that two things can be true at the same time, and it's okay for them to be true and coexisting at the same time. All right, so y'all know I love a story, so I'm gonna share one. This one is about my brain, so no extra people, just me and my brain. So about 2 years ago, I was a late diagnosee of ADHD inattentive, which was once called ADD or attention deficit disorder. How did I get to this diagnosis? I'm so glad you asked, right? Walk with me for a second, if you will. So the symptoms that I started experiencing while well into my adulthood, maybe around 2017 or so, they were strange to me because there were a few, but there was one main one that kind of bugged me out. I suddenly had the hardest time remembering things, which was very strange because I used to have a fantastic memory. I could pull it out. I could tell you what was said, who was there, what colors were there, who was wearing what. My memory was really great. It had gotten so bad, y'all, that I was like, I'm going to go see a neurologist because something's wrong. Like, I was freaked out. And I'm thinking, especially, maybe it was because my maternal grandmother, in her elderly ages of life, she had dementia. And so, y'all know my mind is a prison kitchen. You never know what's happening in there, right? So my mind's saying maybe we have early onset dementia, right? I know that's dramatic, y'all. I know. But I really was weirded out so much that I went to go see a neurologist. And when I went to see him, we did the test and he said, your brain is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with its function. There's nothing weird looking like there's in there, tumors, nothing. The brain is fine. And so I don't know what he thought. Maybe he thought I was tripping, but he did a beautiful thing, which is referred me to a neuropsychologist, and his name was Dr. Kawaja. And Dr. K, he met with me and he ordered the testings and he walked me through all of the things. And so lo and behold, I was diagnosed with ADHD inattentive. Now, Dr. Kawaja, who by the way really is phenomenal, if it's a recommendation I can ever give for anything at all, it would be if you need a neuropsychologist, check out Dr. Kawaja. He broke a lot of things down for me so beautifully. One was that having the inattentive type of ADHD means I wasn't hyperactive in class or in general, right? And I definitely wasn't impulsive, which is why it didn't show up sooner, like with other people who have the impulsivity or hyperactivity type. On the contrary, during my school age years, I was a great student. I paid attention. I was in advanced classes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this really even continued for me being a good student through college. And if you know me, you know I have entirely too many degrees, but we will talk about that on another day. So ADHD inattentive meant that I had a hard time paying attention or staying focused, and that I was easily distracted by like either external stimuli or internal thoughts. And honestly, it was usually my internal thoughts. And that I had some forgetfulness regarding daily activities, like what went on in a day, what was going on around me. And all of these things started showing up in my adulthood, around, like I said, 2017. Here are a couple more things Dr. Kawaja told me during that appointment we had to go over my test results. Before I go on, y'all, let me be clear that I am nobody's doctor. I am not a medical or a psychological professional, and this is by no means any type of medical or psychological advice. So if whatever I'm saying now or throughout the rest of this episode, if it resonates with you, if you say, that sounds similar to what I'm experiencing, or similar to what someone I know or care about is experiencing, I'm the first one to say, go see a doctor. Just make that happen. Don't just listen to me. Definitely go see a doctor. So there's the main things that Dr. Kawaja told me was, first, ADHD of any type, whether it is the hyperactivity type, the inattentive type, the impulsivity type, and I think there may be another one, which is a hybrid of some of them. All of these types, they show up differently between gender and between race, and not everyone will have all of or even some of the same symptoms, regardless if you're the same gender or race, right? Me as a Black woman, if I'm comparing my symptoms to another Black woman's, they may be completely the same, they may be some of the same, they could be none of the same. For instance, one of the major symptoms of the inattentive type is being very disorganized and like not being able to pay attention to detail. Honey, that's not me. Oh, no, not me. I pay attention to all the things, the little details. In my mind, it is the small things that make everything up. And I am very, very organized, probably to a fault. Second thing, and this was something I really appreciated, y'all, was when he said that having ADHD isn't wrong. I don't have a problem, and I'm air quoting, and there's nothing to cure or to fix. Having ADHD just means that my brain is quite literally wired differently from other people who don't have ADHD, or even people who have a different type of ADHD. So let me repeat that. If you have any neurodivergence, aka brain difference, like ADHD, there is nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. I mean, you might be crazy, but it's not because of the ADHD. All right, so let's swing back to my deep and abiding need, and yes, it is a need for organization. Being organized the way that I need means that everything has a home. If you've ever been in my house, everything has a home. And I'm a little rattled when things are not in their home, because in my brain, and typically out loud, the home of said things are clear. Now, we can discuss where the home will be, but it absolutely will have a home. And if things are not put into that agreed upon home, y'all, I really just can't handle it. It just does something to my soul. So if I was completely headstrong about things having a clear home and a certain home, imagine the struggle I had with the gray. To me, the gray felt chaotic and homeless and disorganized. I was, and kind of still am, right? But at that point, I was a very clear cut type of lady, right? Either it is or it ain't. It's up or it's down. It's left or it's right. All the other mocha chocolate bull crap about the middle was fully and wholly unnecessary and stupid. And I didn't have time for it, and I refused to make time for it. For anyone that knew me during the non-grade time of my life, please do accept my humblest apologies. It was a wild ride. I'm so sorry, friends and family. Anyway, so being diagnosed with ADHD, it really forced me to sit with the gray, because I had to figure out how to reconcile my brain with the world I live in. Another thing is, this has nothing to do with ADHD or the gray, maybe about the gray a little bit, but I'm left-handed. The only thing I can do with my right hand is shift a manual car and text. Everything else, left-handed. And so living in a world that is right dominant, where all of the things are made for, well, we're better now. Very inclusive. I love it. But then growing up, everything was made for people who were right dominant, right? Even like, y'all know when you're like ladling punch out of a bowl, and if you use your right hand and you're holding the cup in the left hand, that little spigot spout pour piece of the ladle, it's to the left, because they want you to pick it up with your right hand and pour it to the left, because the cup is in your left hand. Now imagine me, my very left-handed self, picking up the ladle with my left hand and holding the cup with my right hand, and there's no spigot for me to use to pour nicely. It was punch everywhere, oftentimes. Nonetheless, so back to me and my brain. Having to reconcile my brain, literally how my brain works, how it's wired, the framework of what it was, with the world that I live in. And the gray showed up in everything, because my brain showed up in everything, and the world showed up in everything. Friendships, relationships, parenting, work, spousery, daughterhood, because I'm somebody's daughter, so daughterhood, all of the things, etc. Hear me, y'all. I've always been a very deeply empathetic person to anyone, whether it's a friend or a stranger on the street, anyone that had life, anyone who had experience, like just human experience. And even more so if there was pain or trauma or some type of struggle, I deeply, very, very empathetic to my fellow humankind, right? But as far as my life went, oh, no ma'am, no sir. No ma'am, no sir. So I had to step out of my own comfort zone of black and white and enter the gray, which was wildly uncomfortable. Y'all, like, for real, like, hoo-wee, Jesus, what fresh hell is this? What do you mean there can be more than one option? What do you mean that multiple things exist at the same time and it's okay? What is going on? But I stuck it out, y'all. I stuck with it. And in sticking with it, I realized that staying in the gray didn't make me careless or indecisive or even weak. It actually made me thoughtful, because it allowed me to hold space for myself and for my own human experience, and therefore for others and their experiences, without rushing to conclusions or rushing to find an answer to fix all of everything. And for me, that's when I really, for real, started to grow up. And so to me, the gray is this wonderful place or space that reminds us that life really isn't a straight line. There's nothing linear about life except aging from being 1 year old to a 5-year-old to a 27-year-old. Like, that's the only linear thing is our age and this thing that we call life. It's really this beautiful winding road. And it, again, shows up everywhere in our relationships, in our careers, in our faith journeys, and how we even view ourselves. And it's in those moments where things aren't going as planned and you're really left trying to figure out what now, or what do I do now? It's in the conversations with yourself, because listen, I know we all talk to ourselves. I do it frequently, but it's in those conversations with yourself, or even with people, that are in your support circle, your therapist, your parent, your best friends, your sister, your brothers, your cat, okay, your dog. I'm not judging nobody, because sometimes you just need to talk. Whatever those conversations are, whomever you're having them with, this is where you realize that both sides have a point, even if you disagree with the other point. And it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. Why? Because it requires vulnerability, and it requires patience, and it requires the willingness for us to admit that we just don't have all the answers. This can be difficult for a number of reasons. One of the most blatant and obvious reasons is that our society rewards certainty, and it rewards quick decisions or quick decision making. So the gray, where we literally have to slow down to contemplate, can feel like we're failing, right? Another reason, and we're going to be real, y'all, is trauma, right? Whether it's childhood trauma, relational trauma, family trauma, work trauma, that trauma, it tends to make us black and white only, because we find that we can't afford to be unclear about anything. We can't afford to be uncertain about anything, because trauma triggers the survival mechanisms. And in survival mode, the gray is dangerous. It's a dangerous place to be when you're in survival mode. But y'all, choosing to sit in the gray, again, it's not a weakness, it's a strength, because that's the space where growth and understanding live. And that's the space where we're able to thrive rather than just surviving. And so one of the things I know is that we can be just me. I'll take this one. I used to be like this, but we, the people, we do like to label folks, and we do like to put them and everything else in a box, right? So like, are you this or are you that? Do you agree or disagree? Are you right or are you wrong? But what if people really are still just trying to figure it out? What if the answer really is, I don't know yet? I have no idea. Living, to me, in the gray, it just diffuses the pressure of perfection, because it makes space for exploration and for understanding and for learning and for growth. I'm a strong believer that every person has the ability to change, because every person has the ability to learn. Now, the willingness is different, but we can change, right? We're learning, we're understanding, and we're growing, and growth is going to always mean change, right? So let me take it back, because y'all know I do love me some Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to take it back real quick. Faith is full of gray. Why? Because faith isn't needed if you know what's going to happen. So it means not knowing, to me, not knowing, and still trusting God when you don't know the plan. It means believing in his goodness when life is feeling unfair. It's wrestling with the doubts and still having to show up in faith. Living in the gray, to me, isn't just a luxury. It's really a necessity for spiritual growth. And honestly, it is in those gray moments, in those gray spaces, where I've experienced some of the most profound moments of connection with him. And let me say, y'all, and I may say it frequently in other episodes too, God has never, not one time, let me down. So how did I get comfortable being uncomfortable? How did I get comfortable being uncomfortable in the gray until I was comfortable in the gray? The first thing I did was real simple. I just took it one step at a time. And that first step was I didn't rush to figure everything out. I didn't even rush to figure out how to navigate the gray, right? I just started by giving myself room to breathe and to think and to just be, right? I started asking better questions. I stopped asking, what's the right answer, right? What do I do? And I started asking questions like, what can I learn from this? What am I being taught? And once I was okay with not needing to have the right answer all the time, y'all, I started being kinder to myself. And that made it okay, even more so, to not have every single thing sorted out. And again, the foundation to all of this for me was prayer and reflection. I learned to bring all my uncertainties, all the razzle dazzles of my life to God. And I really just trusted that He got me through them. And He always has. And so what do we gain from embracing the gray? First, the gray is where compassion lives. It is where we learn to see people and see them as more than just their worst moments. It is where we learn to and are able to extend grace to ourselves and to other people. The gray really is where empathy and creativity and again understanding, it thrives there. It's the space that lets us grow beyond limitations, whatever those limitations may be. And my first limitation again was figuring out how to be in the gray. Once I got settled with all that, like how to be in the gray, the next limitation that I had was how to be okay in the gray, how to embrace it as part of life, my life. Y'all, I am a naturally curious person, so I'm just going to ask a question. I'm never afraid to ask a question in order to understand something or to figure something out. So I kept doing that. I kept asking questions. I kept staying curious, but I switched the motive of my questions from solely wanting an answer to wanting understanding. And of course, understanding will naturally lead to me getting answers. And so it's the understanding that helped me to let go of perfection. It helped me to let go of the thought that life has to fit neatly into categories. And not having to categorize meant I learned how to hold space for contradiction. Again, it's okay for me to feel two things at once. It's okay for me to disagree and still be interested in hearing the other point. And doing all of this helped me to understand that growth happens in the in-between moments, in the spaces between the notes. I don't know. I don't think we even understand that we actually do understand this concept of gray, because we really do. And it shows up when we say things like we learn to read in between the lines, right? The point of the gray is to help us to learn to be present. It's to help us to learn how to listen and to understand and ultimately to grow. And it's not a space to fear. It is a space to honor. Like I said, it's a gift, and it really is a luxury. So as we wrap up, right, we've unpacked the gray, what it is, why it's important, how to embrace it in our lives, understanding the luxury of it. The gray, it's not about being indecisive or passive, because I am not a passive person. I'm not aggressive, but I'm not a passive person. It's really about being intentional and being thoughtful. And it's about finding, beauty in the complexities of the condition of being human, and just learning to grow in the middle of the mess, because the middle is messy. So if this this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, a message, and or share it with someone who might need a reminder that the gray really is just worth exploring. Next week, we're going to tackle a big one. We're going to tackle and talk about personhood versus gender jackets. And hear me out, this one is about peeling back the layers of different stereotypes and tropes that exist and learning how to connect person to person first, rather than man to man or woman to woman or man to woman or woman to man first, right? Trust me, it's a good one. Anyway, y'all, thanks so much for listening. I always appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all remember the gray, it is a gift. Explore it, understand it, embrace it. And until next time, stay curious, friends, stay kind, and stay true to your journey. We'll talk soon. I'm just trying to